As Charles so helpfully pointed out, we all up here are, I think he pointed it out twice or thrice, we're former teachers and we're old. But what we really want to do is support the current teachers who are doing what we want. And so we want to keep good teachers teaching. So Paul and I will be working to formulate, to form, and to sustain a new alliance for teaching. And we put together some questions for you to help us figure out what we need to do. So I'll let Paul take over.
Okay, yeah. Are we going to move the slides ahead? Do we have a little slide thingy?
That's a good question,
Yeah,
Paul.
okay, I think this might be it. Is this it? Mm-hmm. Does this thing move the thing? There we go. We don't have a logo yet. We have a name. No, it's okay. I can prowl.
Stalk.
So what do we have in mind? So we've been thinking about a lot of different things that we want to do. And because we are insurgents, because we are dissidents, we need to be very careful about who, when we reach out, we need to be careful about, privacy, vetting, making sure that people are sincere, they're not bad actors, and starting with some of the meetings that I attended before I left my school with Bonnie, ran through the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. It was extremely helpful to me. So we like to be able to continue to have regular meetings of teachers where they can support each other and connect with each other. And another thing we want to do is have a kind of a lab or skunk works where teachers can talk about the kinds of things I mentioned in the panel. How do you add things to your lesson that will broaden the students' minds, that will not give them that simplistic picture, that will provide an alternative to the Americaphobia that Dr. Hill talked about. We also want to have teachers give them the tools to reach out to other teachers who are questioning or curious about viewpoint diversity. I had many teachers approach me in private, colleagues, and say things like, I won't go as far as you, but I think I know where you're coming from. And I had my own concerns about this. Or to say things like, I was in that meeting, that DEI meeting, and I couldn't help but wonder what you were thinking, right? And so simply by making your views known, even in private, you actually, by standing out from the crowd, you can command a great deal of attention and curiosity. So how do you leverage that curiosity to try to change the culture in the school? The best you can. We want to also find ways so that teachers can help support those students who are disaffected by the ideological nature of the content of what they're learning and want to do more. Or maybe they are going online and finding other material. How do you try to become an advisor to a club? Maybe start a club. I had a student from Venezuela, and we were talking about how could we do something around the Venezuelan crisis and actually start a fund to help victims of socialism, right? So this is working within a certain paradigm of charity and helpfulness, which the schools will often talk about that as being a value, and that is a value. So how can we try to use that? Also, we'd like to develop a field manual, ultimately within a certain time frame. It'll be a version 1, version 2, from all of these different strategies that teachers are doing to try to operate within these woke environments, right? To do their jobs more faithfully with better intellectual integrity. And I probably should have said this at the beginning. The top of this slide is what our current statement is on what we're trying to do. We want to support, connect, and equip educators dedicated to restoring balance and intellectual integrity in their classrooms. So these are the questions that we like you to help us when we start this nascent organization. And we were thinking, how do we want to do this? We want to do this with tables.
Yeah, we sort of thought we might have 4 tables, but
Yeah.
I see we have more than 4 tables,
Yeah.
but they're not entirely full. So I'm thinking maybe if this side of the room could tackle questions A and B,
Okay.
and if that side could look at questions C and D, we would love then, maybe 10 minutes to look at those. If you want to confer and you two tables do A, we'll do B, C and D, maybe that's a good way, A, B, C, and D. But we wouldn't expect anyone to do more than one of these questions, but then we would love to hear from you these thoughts, and that will help us to understand where best to apply our efforts.
So what we're going to do is we're going to give you some time to talk about it, and maybe after 20 minutes or so, take a break and really confer, and maybe the tables can report back on some of the key points that they feel they come out of the discussion.
Well, it looks like you did form 4
Yeah,
tables.
good,
So what
okay.
question are you? A, B, C, and D? Does that work? Thank you.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Thank you. Have at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense.
Good.
Is there time up? You ready for the answer?
Yes, we're ready for the answers. I think we're ready to
All right.
reconvene.
Who wants to go first?
A goes first.
We're going to see. I missed the part about the alphabet. See, A, okay. So they're answering each one?
Table A.
Oh, they each
question
have a different
A,
question. Okay.
Table B,
Yeah.
did question B. So we would love to hear from A.
Table A.
Okay, that's us. Hello.
Yes. Hi,
Yes.
Joanna.
Oh, you're the spokesperson. Okay.
We got a spokesperson, yeah.
So this is just trying to sum up what we've all been talking about here. So one of the
Great.
first.
That's a long question.
Oh,
Go ahead.
is
No,
that
you're
okay?
up.
So we were answering the question, what do you want from your child's teacher? And our starting point was curiosity, that we want the teacher to spark intellectual curiosity within children, and that should come from a basis of a kind of being intellectually knowledgeable. And we kind of said it doesn't have to be all across the board, but if a teacher's passionate and enthusiastic and knowledgeable about one particular area and can really spark a passion, ignite a flame of interest, intellectual interest in a child, that's a really good starting point. And that curiosity also led us to think about that it would prompt the child to ask questions, recognize that there's more than one side to an issue, and come from a perspective of kind of criticality in relation to particular issues, which also led us to a discussion about the political role of the teacher in the classroom, or whether for a good teacher, should it be not knowing that the teacher should not reveal their political views. You should be able to sit through that teacher's entire class without knowing what their political views were. I kind of suggested that perhaps with older children, so I'm talking really 16 plus here, they know, children are clever when they get to 16, 17 years old. They can work out, and they make it their job to work out what the teacher's political views are. So in which case, perhaps having some honesty and being upfront, perhaps, of saying, this is my political perspective, but that's got to come with acknowledging that there are other political perspectives as well, and the teacher's got to almost overcompensate for the recognition of what their own political view is. And we kind of said that this becomes a problem, teachers having political views becomes a problem when every single teacher has the same political view. I said children are not getting a diversity across the curriculum, and the teachers are passing off their own view as being the only view, or even a kind of neutral perspective on a particular topic. Just very quickly, we also talked about the importance of integrity, of teachers behaving with integrity in the classroom. So I guess we were shocked by what was said back here about children being marked more harshly, or graded more harshly, or disciplined more harshly because the teacher disagreed with them. Whereas if you have integrity as a teacher, you should not be doing that. And also the importance of an openness, if you like, with parents, or transparency about what's being taught within the schools. So I guess 4 words then: curiosity, honesty, integrity, and openness were the kind of things that we arrived at.
Lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great.
Do you going to B after that?
Yes, B.
Since again, I'm the guy with the microphone, can I say something about each one at the end? So, yeah, just one little
Or in
small
between.
thing. No, I will let each table do their question and then ask something. I'm looking at, one of the things I don't want from a teacher is a friend, someone who's given up their authority, who's like, well, I'm not really the teacher, we're all buddies. Come on, friends. That's what I want. I don't want a teacher to be an equal with a 6-year-old. Call me crazy.
Crazy.
Table B.
All right, I think the one-word answer to what's missing today in schools today is education.
Right?
That's very
And we
good.
say that in all seriousness.
I wrote it
think
down.
Yeah,
you wrote it down.
You
Okay.
get an A plus.
Right.
And I think if we say what does that mean, we talked a little bit about is it's really sort of a classical liberal arts type humanities education. And it's also academic rigor, which I think we've completely lost. I think the 2 questions that we talked a little bit about, I don't know if we have an answer, is should there be, a moral component of education? I know, Paul, that's something that we've talked about. And should there be sort of a patriotic aspect if we're talking about public education specifically? I think these are questions we raise. I'm not sure we know the answers to them. So we didn't actually get to the second
I have
question
something
about what's-
controversial to say
Let's
about
stay
the
after.
second one. I might get in trouble, you all. We don't, things aren't binary. We don't have to agree. The second question was, what's better about the schools these days? Nothing.
That was going to be our answer.
Absolutely
Yeah.
nothing. Nothing is better. No one wants to challenge me. I was expecting people to challenge. All these teachers here, nobody wants to say, well, let me tell you what's better. Jeremy Adams is here. Nothing's better, Jeremy? A brilliant man. That's why I like
Well,
him. No.
I will say there is less actual bullying, I think, in schools today. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, and it depends on what you call. See, here again, I keep bringing up race. We're supposed to be diverse, but I'm a black man. And I grew up in Gary in a mostly black. Yeah, I am. I started last Thursday. I'm starting to like it and growing into my blackness.
Looks good. Yeah.
And I don't know. I think today they would call the way I grew up bullying. I don't know if you all, the older people who aren't black would still remember the dozens. We literally would send kids home crying every day. But it was fun. We did it to each other. It's like, okay, then I come back to school. It's like, how can I break you?
Right.
But you talk about making fun of people. It was what we did. So I guess was that bullying teachers? Did we bully
talked
them?
about this. Gregory and I talked about it. Gregory, you here? Yeah. We talked about the line between bullying and teasing, right? And I think there are definitely cultural differences there, right? Like,
But I don't think I remember people like literally getting bullied and stuffed in the locker, like the stuff you saw in the 80s John Hughes films.
I got that.
Because my friends wouldn't tolerate that, right? They drew a line at it. We can make verbally, we can make fun of you. I mean, make fun of your parents, make fun of your socioeconomic, and nothing was off. If you're poor, we're gonna make fun of you. It doesn't make you rich, we're gonna make fun of you. But we didn't like punch people though. It wasn't like that. So I don't know if that's bullying, that's less bullying.
You never got a swirly. You guys, do you know what that is?
Do we never have what again? I'm sorry.
Swirly. When they hold you upside down, flush the toilet, and then they go like that, and then your hair.
I thought that was just on the movies. People did that?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you white people? I'm sorry.
I don't know. It's in our culture.
I apologize.
We can't help
I didn't
it.
mean that.
Yeah.
No, we did not do that in my school.
Good. I mean,
like if they were gay kids, it was a different time where people were like, oh, well, I think these are, but they didn't bully them. They didn't do anything. They
Hang on,
didn't
can
say,
I say
I think
something?
that kid's a little.
Charles. There's less boy bullying. There's a lot more girl bullying.
True. But isn't a lot of it cyber and all that kind of stuff? But then that means it's not better. Nothing's better. So no, there's not less
you're
bullying.
right. I take it
Nothing.
back.
I stand on that.
He stands.
Okay.
Table C.
So we had a couple teachers at the table as well as parents. So how successful have you been connecting with teachers and other parents? In some cases, Jeremy said he just doesn't hear from a lot of parents. So we said it kind of depends on the school that you're talking about. My experience was that I did engage with my school and was not terribly well received, which is an understatement. But it really, I mean, it was important that we did make that effort because it really opened the eyes for a lot of people in my community. So.
Who wrote an
Even if you-
op-ed about you and how you're the reason? Didn't they write something about you're the reason why all the
Yes.
schools are bad now?
Mother Jones just gave my parent group credit for starting the parent revolution,
Right.
which is
You-
not true.
you did
but
that,
Yes,
so-
thank you.
Right.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It was written as it was meant to be a hit piece against me and my parent group, but it didn't look that bad at all. But we had recognized some of these issues in 2017, so it was a little ahead of the Great Awakening that happened during COVID. So if we've engaged with the administrators, received poorly, but it was, I wouldn't let anyone, I wouldn't let that deter anyone because you have to advocate. I mean, otherwise, what is the option? The slide continues. And so, can you have I think one of the things we talked about here is like, how can you have good faith discussions with people that are just not interested in having one of those? And I don't think we've cracked that nut. I mean, I think that is something where you need to, in a public school situation, take control of your school board. I mean, that's really going to be the fastest, best option. Private school parents, I don't know. I think that remains to be seen, but we're here to solve that, right? So.
My comment on C. I have been very successful in connecting with my teachers and administrators, not always going well. Again, I am working against the whole narrative here because, again, it's going back to race. I'm black. So I told somebody that one of the worst things is that in this whole racial infused situation we're in culture, it's mostly bad. But the one silver lining is if you disagree with this and you're black, you should be able to speak up. So I'm shocked that there are people telling me there are black administrators, teachers, and parents that have a problem with it, and they're whispering too. I get why the white parents are like, I'm with you, but I don't understand why you got a microphone. They're giving you a platform, go use it. But so I haven't had a problem there, but the parents are usually very quiet, and they'll like whisper like, I don't want to rock the boat, but you may be right. And like you say, it's hard to get them to, if they don't want to speak up, they're not going to speak up. But yeah, I don't think it's been that well received, but they can't really tell me not to speak. So. I haven't gotten one. The Asians are white adjacent. I'm just not really a white black guy. I'm a fake black guy. I'm not politically black, or whatever that means. I'm not political at all, so I guess I'm not technically politically black. They're right. Table D?
So we have a consensus at this table that we have no idea.
Yeah.
Love the honesty.
But one thing that I am kind of thinking about with this is that, it's a double-edged sword to a certain extent. So, parents being too overly involved in what the teacher is doing in the classroom, I think, is causing some of these problems. So, you have parents who have an agenda and they're really putting a lot of pressure on the teacher to carry out that method and that ideology. So I wonder if parents sort of backing off and letting teachers do what they're supposed to be doing would maybe help in the long term. Or, maybe it's like you were saying, that organizing an alliance of teachers that sort of get rid of the teachers' unions that are, dictating a lot of this and form their own group.
No, go ahead.
So I'm insanely curious listening to talk radio. I've done it since I was 17, and that was a long time ago. And so the guy I listen to a fair bit is a guy by the name of Dennis Prager, who I think is brilliant. And he said something, I don't know, some time ago, but I just never forgot it. He said, your beliefs, your convictions mean nothing unless you have the courage to put words and to speak about those beliefs and convictions. Courage is everything. And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say, I think they moved the slide, but it said something about what can teachers do. I can tell you one thing they can do. They can, like Paul talked about closing the doors and the way, he may disagree with me. I'm not in the classroom, so I may be completely wrong. But you're saying, let's say you must teach the 1619 project. They can teach it, and you're right, but they can teach it in a nuanced way. I'm like, I'm just not going to do it until you force me to do it. So no, I'm not going to teach it. I'm not going to tell the black kid in class he could have been a slave. Hypothetically, I'm not saying it actually happened. I'm not going to, tell the kid he's oppressed. I'm not going to do it.
If you can get away with it, great.
I mean, do it until you can.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So part of
And then go to the next step. So that buys you a few weeks. So don't
Right.
teach it until they come and say you have to teach it, and then teach it in a nuanced way. But
Yeah,
I would go
exactly.
weeks without even teaching. Oh man, I
Exactly,
forgot.
right.
I'm so busy. I'm writing lesson plans. I forgot to be a racist. I'll do it next
So
week.
you kind of have to do you have to do an environmental audit as a teacher of exactly what you can get away with and what you can do, right?
Right,
Before
because you could just say, I'm too old.
Right.
Right. I don't understand it yet, and I don't want to
can't
do it until I
change.
truly understand it, right? So I need to understand it. I'm going to do it in the next semester once I get an understanding of it, and then forget it then. I mean, you'll get caught, no doubt, but
Yeah,
it's going
I
to take a
mean,
while. They're
the
not
thing
that
is,
bright. Come in.
I don't
not that
have
bright.
I do not have a problem with using deception on people who are fundamentally evil.
Well, thank you, Paul. I thought you were going to tell me I was wrong.
Okay,
Is that but
bad
coming?
faith.
Is that but?
Bad faith. Let me put it that way. So, and why? Because it's about the kids. So if what I'm doing, like I'm not there for the adults, I'm there to teach the children. So if I'm going to do my best job doing that, means that I foot drag a little bit over here. I'm not going to lie outright, but I'm maybe use some strategy. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you used to be able to, I would assume, use the makeup of the class to buy time. Like, well, Johnny was unruly or whatever. But now that we've learned this weekend that the kids don't talk, you can't even use that as an excuse, right? Used to be like, there was a fight in the class, so I couldn't teach the racism, But now they're not doing anything, so now you got plenty of time. So you have to find other ways to obfuscate.
It's delicate. Yeah.
Is that me or is that you, Bonnie?
Paul's doing it.
Oh, Paul did it. You did it. You read it.
What are we missing? What are we not? Yes. Tell me never to read the slides. Yes, sir.
I don't know, do I need a microphone?
It's one coming if you like. It's one at your table, I think.
I think one thing, teachers need to do is know who the organizations are in their state that can, stand up for laws that are already on the books that are going to protect them. I mean, we need to build these coalitions, and then we need to be wise, right? I'll just give you an example. So Massachusetts has the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, the sports organization for all schools. And they mandated the DEI pledge, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion pledge, right, to all students. So you had to sign this pledge that guys could be on girls' sports teams in order to play a sport. And so our organization reached out to the MIAA and said, that's unconstitutional, it's compelled speech. They said, you're right, they stopped doing it, right? And then I called all these ADs, like I called the AD of the second largest school district in Massachusetts, and he totally agreed with us on our position, right? And the majority of ADs agreed with us. So I find that maybe even the majority of teachers are on our page. We just need to not only empower them, but organize them so that they have one voice, so that in this case, all the athletic directors can say, before this even hits the fan, just say, I know that's unconstitutional. I have 25 other ADs that'll stand with me. That kind of groundwork needs to be put in place.
Beth?
Yeah, that's really important.
Along on the list of rights, and I might put Bob on the spot here to talk about the Parental Rights and Privacy Act, like what parents can expect at a federal level. Aren't there certain protections regarding surveys and certain ways that you participate in school that at least would apply to a public model, perhaps not a private? I will walk over with this.
I was like, where's the other mic? Where did she go?
I'll be right back.
Paige.
Thanks a lot, Beth. Yes, so there are two, and Bonnie, you may be familiar with these as well. There's a law called FERPA, and there's a law called the PPRA. They are federal laws that basically require certain parental rights and notifications. We're only talking about public schools being governed by them. So if your child is in a private school, this will not apply unless somehow they receive federal funds. The PPRA basically says, in a nutshell, that if I remember correctly, the student, if a student survey is, if a survey is provided to a student, there needs to be a parental notification, and I think even opt-out opportunity. The FERPA statute provides a opportunity for parents to inspect and copy educational records concerning their child's education records. There are also prohibitions on the disclosure to third parties from the school concerning the educational records. There are some really big exceptions to that. So there's a lot of sharing of records going on with other agencies. That's a whole thing, and researchers as well. The real problem with both statutes is that there's no private right of action for a parent to seek enforcement of these laws. All that you're able to do if you see what you think is a violation by a school of these laws is you file an administrative complaint with the U.S. Department of Education. They have an office there called the Student Privacy Office that consider these complaints. They investigate them, and in 2 years you'll get a response. So it's a really ineffective enforcement mechanism. One thing that we're doing at DFI actually is advocating for a modification of these laws to allow parents to sue directly to enforce them, because when that happens, then administrators will begin to focus on some of these privacy rights and inspection rights. So that, in a nutshell, is what they're about.
Alka, you?
Thank you. Just sort of on the question of parents and teachers and privacy and things, to share the situation in Britain. In Britain, it's legally enshrined in Education Acts going back to, I think, the 1944 one, that parents don't have to send their kids to school. They have a duty to educate. Schools are there to help parents educate. Schools have a duty to educate in a way that is in alliance with the parents' values. And the trade-off traditionally in Britain has been that parents will send their kids to school and allow the formal curriculum, the knowledge-based curriculum, leave that up to the teachers. That's what they're there for, right? That's what they're paid for. There is expert specialist knowledge. Parental knowledge is not the same as the knowledge of a teacher. But in return, the reciprocal part of that was that teachers would not try and teach the primary values, the core values of how you run a family, how you love people, how you, your kind of core fundamental beliefs in the world. Those primary social values of socialization are up to the family, including religious ones as well. And schools would deal with the more epistemological values of, you sit still because you have to listen. Like what Ian was saying yesterday, you don't have your phone because we're teaching you how to be, more self-disciplined and things like that. And they worked together. And when they work together, it's a beautiful thing that happens. It's called liberal education. And that's why the trust is so important. So I don't know if there's a way, in Britain, what we're trying to do at the minute is lobby upwards, don't divide us along with other groups working in the trans field, to demand that all content from third-party providers that deal with sex and relationships or that deal with anti-racism are put on the school website. They have to. That has to be compulsory for schools to do that. And then we're also lobbying for a governmental review of all the third-party providers on race. Our report identified over 60 of them, but we know there are a lot more. We don't know who funds them. We don't know who they are. We don't know how many schools they're in. We need to know that, and the government needs to put some effort into it.
And as we wrap up, I see the last question is what other questions we should be asking. I was thinking about that. And, as we release the flock here, since we're at the end and everybody goes about to, as Jason said, fight this war, I think a pivotal thing to do, because you're going to have conversations, like Beth said, with people who agree with you, who don't agree with you, who are afraid to speak and all this kind of thing. But I keep going back to what is the impact on kids? Teachers, you all talk because you care about kids. So does it work? Are you really helping? Or are you just, spitting into the wind? So one of the things we can ask is, you can talk about things like that, like what is the point of what you're doing? What is the effect? What data do you have that shows, that these things are benefiting certain groups? We have a lot of things on the racial front where you have people, or even the gender thing. You have people speaking on behalf of this mythical people who happen to be there. Like, this is what transgendered people think, right? But you're not transgender. Nobody in the group is. There's very few of them, and you're not talking to them. You know, same thing with blacks. It's like, this is what blacks need and what they want, but you're not talking to them. So I would think one of the things that's what we need to do. We need to be asking those questions. What are the effects? What are the results of what's happening? And, you know, finding a way to find some logic in an area where there's so little of it. But I thank you all for what you're doing and what you're trying to do with the other teachers and help them to do. And let's give them a thanks and a round of applause to Alka, Bonnie, Paul, and Chris.